Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor today. It is 6:07 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news, the happiest of Thanksgiving to all of you, and I am thankful that you are all allowing me to join you on this Thanksgiving morning. Going to be joined in a little bit by Congressman Andy Harris from Maryland's 1st Congressional District. Later on, old friend of the show, Nan Hayworth, former member of Congress from the great state of New York. In the meanwhile, I've been talking about the signs of the apocalypse. Just talking about the story about Daryl Hall. I gotta chuckle and shake my head in dismay. Daryl Hall taking out a temporary restraining order against John Oates. That is not, by the way, satire, parody, fake news. Literally done that. Now we've got this just strange story. Andrew Gruel, who I've had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of times. I know Larry and company have as well. Andrew Gruel, who's a chef out in California, great to talk to about food, but also politics and the politics of food. He has this piece out. There is a physicist. I would check his credentials. Physicist named George Vikinis, who was on a BBC podcast called Instant Genius. Now, if he's British, this makes a little bit more sense because we know how much the British like to butcher their food. He says, this physicist says that it's a good idea. It's always a good idea to heat meat first in a microwave. No. But by the way, I use my microwave very sparingly these days. I mean, there was that period of time, right? We all remember this in the late 70s, early 80s when microwaves were being mass produced and we were being told we could cook everything in our microwave ovens. No, not true. So obviously this offends me, disturbs me. I say it's a sign of the apocalypse. Chef Andrew Gruel, he said, you know something? No, he says in this piece, this is why I have trust issues. He decided to go ahead and prove with beyond a shadow of a doubt using the scientific method as to why one should not microwave a steak before cooking it. Here he is. Here's a video he did. Here he is beginning his video. Michael, play cut number 1, please.
So people tell us that now microwaving steaks is the way to go. And by people, I mean the people. I've got one steak right now in the oven getting ready for a reverse sear, and this one I'm going to go in the microwave for 4 minutes, okay? Both roughly the same size steaks. A little bit of salt on this guy, all right? Nothing else. Going in the microwave for 4 minutes, and we're going to do a cut test.
I mean, it's just so gross. By the way, when he talks about the reverse sear, there are lots of different methods that folks talk about in terms of making a perfect steak. And then by that, I mean a steak that is evenly cooked all the way through. There's no gray band around the outside. Some folks like the gray band around the outside, you know, when you right under the sear and you cut it and then it's pink. So the reverse sear method calls for putting a steak into a moderate temperature oven and then letting it come to temperature relatively slowly to the temperature you want, and then finally searing it on a hot flat top. It's kind of like doing a sous vide in the oven. Sous vide is a method of cooking stuff in a water bath under vacuum seal. Then again, getting things very evenly cooked, and then you sear it. There's lots of different ways to do this. I've done them all. But yeah, so then he goes and he does this experiment. He shows it, and I got to tell you, it is so gross the way the steak looks. Michael, go ahead. Let's play cut number 2, please.
All right, 2 steaks cooked in an entirely different manner. I've got one microwaved, one cooked roughly 5 to 6 minutes in a low heat oven and then pan seared at the end. The chives make this, obviously, but pick your team. I mean, you want the microwave steak. Look at the moisture loss on this. This was 4 minutes in the microwave. There's absolutely nothing appetizing about this. This also ruins the meat entirely and gives absolutely no dignity to the cow who lost its life versus something that's just
I love that.
Perfectly seared. Where's the Maillard browning when you microwave the steak? I mean, I just can't even believe someone would suggest this.
Right. It actually does defy the laws of physics to think you're going to get this. not that I need to get all technical with you guys, but the whole point of a microwave oven is that it uses radiation and focused waves to go and excite the water molecules inside an object. So essentially, you're what this physicist is talking about is boiling a steak from the inside out. And again, we know the British love to boil their meat, and I'm not meaning to offend anybody from the Isle of Great Britain, but you folks love to boil your meat. I get that, but that's not the way you're supposed to cook a steak. And this Maillard reaction that Chef Gruel talks about, that's the browning. When you cook a protein in fat or on metal, that charring, the browning that you get, that's the Maillard reaction. It builds flavor. You don't get that in the microwave. And I suppose what this physicist is talking about is pre-cooking it in the microwave and then going and searing it somewhere else. As someone else points out, physicist George Vikinis is a heretic, way outside his lane. Not only puts steak in a microwave, but also discourages salt. You need that. That's the amazing thing, is that, you've got a scientist who is focused on one aspect of the science, and he really ought to stay in his lane. There is a massive body. In fact, I've talked about this with Julie Gunlock quite a bit. I may talk about this with her when we bring her on later on in the show. There is a great science out there regarding food, which, utilizes elements of both physics and chemistry, so that you can optimally cook your food. So the idea that this guy would sort of step in there, like, what does salt do to meat when you sprinkle it on a steak? In fact, give you another recommendation. Chef Gruel is great, and his politics are wonderful. Love having him on. Love talking to him. But if you want a really great channel on cooking steak, there's a channel on YouTube. I think he's also on TikTok, maybe elsewhere. Guga, Guga, Guga Foods. He does two. He does one on meat, and then he does one on sous vide. And the great thing about the one that he does on steak is that he does experiment, and sometimes the experiments are spectacular failures. Like, what happens if you marinate a steak for in peanut butter for a bit? What happens to the steak then? What happens if you coat it with X as a dry marinade? What happens if you coat it with Y? What happens if you use an interesting compound butter on it? Guga Foods, Guga, is just fantastic in terms of dealing with this. And again, using this method, like what he'll do, right? The scientific method, you have a thesis, and then you have a hypothesis, and then you experiment, and you have a control, and you have the variable, and then you test your results at the end. And that's what he does. He cooks a steak in one way. Sometimes he'll have a control that's not seasoned or not marinated. Then he'll have another steak cooked the way he always likes to cook a steak, which is he sous vides it with a little salt, a little pepper, a little garlic powder, and then he has it in whatever the crazy experiment is, and he gets together with two other guys, and they try out their steaks. In fact, it would not surprise me if Guga also goes and does this microwave method. Guys, don't microwave your steaks. Microwave popcorn, microwave butter to get it to melt, or chocolate to get it to melt. Things you want to melt, you put in the microwave. Popcorn, you cook in the microwave. You want to reheat frozen vegetables, you want to get them to steam, cook them in the microwave. That's fine. Reheat rice, go ahead, cook it in the microwave. But beyond that, no. Do not cook raw meat of any kind in the microwave ever. Listen, we'll continue in just a moment, but first it's 6:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Need a new roof? Honor, respect, and trust your home with Valor. Visit valorhome.com.
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor here on O'Connor and Company. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and thank you so very much for letting me join you on whatever you're doing on this Thanksgiving morning. Joining all of us right now is Congressman Andy Harris from the 1st Congressional District of Maryland, someone I always love talking to around the holiday times because he's got such a great perspective. But before we go there before we start, just to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world, Congressman. So there was this another stopgap measure reached last week to avert a government shutdown. What are your thoughts here, and where does the House go from here now that we've got a new speaker?
Well, I have to congratulate Mike Johnson, obviously, on being the speaker and, doing a couple of very important things in his first few weeks. First thing was, funding Israel for the first time in a supplemental appropriation, actually requiring it to be offset from other costs. In this case, it was IRS agents, those supplemental IRS agents. That's an important thing. And then, of course, last week, getting a continuing resolution passed through the House that I think decreases the chance of those huge omnibus spending bills that we've had in the past that really are the budget breakers in Washington.
Yeah, good. I appreciate that. Listen, I know that small business is near and dear to your heart. We've got a new report out from the folks of the National Association of Manufacturers. The regulatory costs are now at $3 trillion annually. I know small businesses use this last quarter of the year, the holiday times, to really make up the bulk of their income. We've had a conversation with Tom Sullivan from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce about this. What are your thoughts about where things stand with the Biden administration and regulatory issues?
Well, as one would expect from a Democrat administration, the regulatory environment is clearly worsened under Joe Biden. There's going to be actually a new regulation affecting all small businesses from the FinCEN regulators starting January 1st. Again, millions of small businesses are going to have filings.
Wow.
Again, it just puts this regulatory paperwork burden is just crazy for small businesses, and it's one of the reasons why this administration has made it so difficult for people to start small businesses and then to keep them running.
So let's turn our attention to things that are more fun and a little more cheerful, which is Thanksgiving and the holiday time. I know I can't remember, Congressman, if your family is first generation or second generation immigrants, but I know these holidays have a special meaning for your family. Talk about Thanksgiving, talk about Christmas, and what the holiday times mean to you.
Sure. No, I'm a first generation American, but my parents came to this country, adopted the holiday of Thanksgiving. It was always one of the just the real great times in our family because our family dispersed throughout the country, but on Thanksgiving, we'd get together, and it was one of those great family holidays, and it's a great tradition. And look, I'm glad that it's still going full blast in the United States. Obviously, Christmas is another great time of the season. And it was, important in my family and important in this country. I think these kind of holidays just remind us how important our family and our roots are.
And how are you guys? How is your family going to celebrate today?
Well, we've got, I'm up at my daughter's house up in Pennsylvania. We've got family in from the Midwest as well. And again, the entire family's not together, but certainly enough to have a great family event.
Do you have a go-to in terms of your favorite dish, the must-have on your Thanksgiving table?
Yeah, absolutely. For about 20 years now, I've actually smoked turkeys for Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I do. Yeah. I mean, if the weather's good, I'll do it on Thanksgiving morning. If the weather's not good on Thanksgiving, I'll do it the day before. But
sure.
Yeah, smoked turkey is on the menu.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, listen, my best to you and yours. We'll get you back for a deeper dive into the end of the year when I fill in for Larry in December. But Congressman, have the happiest of Thanksgivings. Good sir.
That'd be great. You too, Andrew.
Take care. We've got so much more to get to right now at 6:22 here on WM.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, we are back. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor on this glorious Thanksgiving morning. So glad that you could join me here on the air today. Joining all of us right now, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, a former member of Congress from the great state of New York, taking time out of her Thanksgiving schedule to join me today. former Congresswoman Dr. Nan Hayworth. Nan, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
And to you, Andrew. I am very grateful for my friendship with you.
Oh, there you go. And likewise, I am thankful for this for our friendship as well. So listen, I want to start here. This story that almost 36 members of Congress not running for re-election next year, I think, and it's members of both parties. And to me, this goes down, and I think it is the trend line saying that nobody knows what's going to happen in 2024, and members of Congress are nervous about a Biden-Trump rematch. What are your thoughts here?
I think the Biden-Trump rematch is a symptom of a larger problem. And I think that's what subliminally, if not consciously, is driving a lot of these members to seek an exit from Congress.
Sure.
And of course, I've been in Congress, so I know how what a privilege it is to serve, but how frustrating it can be, no question, especially when we don't have many swing districts left, and I'm not necessarily a fan of swing districts because when you represent a swing district in Congress, about half your constituency is unhappy with you at any given time.
Of course.
The ones who come from which is mostly from fairly safely Republican or Democrat districts, tend to be elected pledging an awful lot, pledging to advance an agenda. And then you arrive in Congress, it's a divided Congress, it's a divided Senate, it's a divided nation. In certain respects, although we can obviously detect commonalities, and yet, the biggest commonality is probably that everybody's frustrated with what Washington does. But I think that's the major part of it. Is there is this Sisyphean dread every day. We're going to try to push this rock. When Chip Roy made that impassioned soliloquy the other day, what have the Republicans done? I understand where he's coming from.
Sure.
But strategically, we can't, unfortunately, those of us who are passionate about our liberties and about fiscal conservatism and about, protecting the nation and respecting the Constitution, for those of us, and I'm on that side too, it can be it's maddening to have to compromise with the side that believes equally passionately that government is the seat of all solutions. I was listening to some news earlier in the week about, of course, and we're all hearing the news about these pro-Hamas, so-called pro-Palestinian protests, and they are especially focused. The Democrat National Committee offices were besieged, as we know, and they're really focusing on Democrats more than Republicans. It's 1968 Chicago all over again. And they're going back to Chicago. I lived just outside Chicago as a kid, so I remember it pretty vividly. But basically, the phrase came to mind, Andrew. I'll offer this to you. The Democrat Party is the party of screamers and schemers.
I like it. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, that's
here first.
There you go. I love it. Hashtag schemers and streamers.
Schemers and screamers, or screamers and schemers, because it really is. It is the impetuous children who want to be given everything. They want to demand everything. They haven't had to produce much of anything. They are naturally attracted to a party that aggrandizes itself and gains power and wealth through using the ultimate lethal, the coercive force of government to compel those of us who just want to, work and raise our families and live a normal life. They compel us to pay for their scheme.
That's right. That's right. And listen, it's the folks who want to subsidize underwater basket weaving in universities today. We all know what the various analogs to that are.
But, you know what? I'd be okay with underwater basket weaving
Sure.
at private expense if they weren't also serving it with, a generous helping of Marxist indoctrination.
Anti-Americanism. Agreed wholeheartedly. So, Nan, how are you going to be celebrating your Thanksgiving today?
Well, I'm going to go out to eat at Ocean Prime in Naples, Florida.
Are you? Oh, that's good.
Yes, and
for you.
I'm going to have fish, Andrew.
Well, listen, fish was on the menu at the first Thanksgiving. Listen, we got to get you back. Got to get you back in December. I'm back in for Larry in December. I want to talk to you about sort of do a year in review. Nan, I am grateful and thankful for your friendship as well. Happiest of Thanksgiving to you.
And to you, Andrew, and your family, and our great nation. May it survive.
Amen.
And thrive.
Amen to that. We've got more coming up. It's 6:43 on WMAL. Well, welcome back, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor today. Listen, want to know what is your go-to on your Thanksgiving table? At me on Twitter, at Andrew_Langer, Langer. Listen, we're here to help on Thanksgiving morning. I know it's a stressful time. Want to start here, though. You know who's not having a stressful Thanksgiving? Joe Biden. Joe Biden once again going back to a billionaire's home on Nantucket, David Rubenstein's home. They're going up there. Here's the thing that gets me about this. All right, we're continuing to go through this navel gazing, in intense scalp hunting over at the Supreme Court, where the left is trying to get Justice Clarence Thomas off the high court for a variety of what they perceive to be transgressions in terms of his friendships with various wealthy individuals around the world. Not that any of these individuals have had business before the high court, or that Clarence Thomas has had to make any kind of judgment on business that they've had directly. And yet this idea of Joe Biden spending Thanksgiving weekend and spending lots of his vacation time at the homes of the wealthiest of wealthy individuals in America, who undoubtedly do have business before the White House or before the federal government. This passes without any kind of a comment from the left. Again, if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. So the Bidens are going to be up there on Nantucket once again. There once was a president on Nantucket. Don't let me go down that road of that kind of a limerick here. But more to the point, because we want to be helpful. Many of you are going to have Thanksgiving dinners with relatives that tend to turn stressful because somebody wants to be the ant at the picnic, the fly in the ointment. Somebody wants to be the pain in the posterior, the burr under the saddle of Thanksgiving dinner. And Newsmax has given us a helpful list of things not to discuss, or the things that people want to avoid. Lord knows, listen, I'm going to say it. I've had moments at my Thanksgivings where there have been people who want to make it political for whatever reason. And I don't like talking politics generally at these kinds of events, because I don't think it's particularly fun, and you never know how angry somebody is going to get about something. But here, this great list here at Newsmax, the top conversations people want to avoid at Thanksgiving. Number 1, the 2024 election. 2, Trump. 3, family drama and gossip. 4, notice how I put that in there, the Biden family drama and gossip. 4, Biden. 5, COVID. 6, personal relationships. 7, jobs. 8, personal finances. 9, war. Or 10, conspiracy theories. Well, what do you have left to talk about after that? No, I mean, listen. One of the problems is, right, one of the suggestions that Newsmax makes is that you go and you steer it towards some kind of common foe, like a sports team that your family all hates, right? If you're all Mets fans talking about the Yankees or the Phillies or whatever, if you're Yankees fans talking about the Red Sox, or vice versa, if you're Red Sox fans dumping on the Yankees, that is certainly one way to try to get everybody allayed against a common foe. The problem, of course, is you always have that person You always have that person who wants to take everything and make it political. It's like the Saturday Night Live sketch Debbie Downer come to real life. There's always that family member who, no matter what kind of innocuous discussion, right? You'll talk about, I'll give you a good topic. We just were talking about it. Hey, did you hear about this crazy story, this physicist in Great Britain who tells us that you ought to microwave meat, a steak, for 4 minutes before you cook it? Isn't that crazy? God, this is a sign that the apocalypse is upon us. Well, maybe that's a conspiracy theory, so you can't talk about it that way. But it invariably, right, you start talking about something like that, should be an innocuous topic, and somebody will turn around and make it political. Don't you know? Don't you know, Andrew? They're talking about steaks. Cows pollute the environment. A meat diet pollutes the environment, or runoff from cow manure. It's polluting the bay. We need to have less cows. People need to be eating more insects, or whatever crazy thing that's out there. There. Thank you for the Debbie Downer reference. I mean, that's the thing, right? Listen, one of the things I'm glad about, before we go to a break, is I have certain family members who have dietary restrictions who won't be joining me. Right? I for years I couldn't make my Brussels sprouts that were tossed and roasted with bacon. Because I had a family member who wouldn't eat bacon, wouldn't eat meat. Thank God I don't have to do that anymore. Listen, it's 6:52 here on WMAL.